The end of this video, they say, let's get to work, let's make it happen. And this is the purpose of this day. We have a global agenda. We're going to talk about what is the agenda, how can we achieve the agenda, how can you and you and you and me be a part of achieving the agenda. We're going to be here until 4 today. I have put 4 quite high goals for the day, but I think we're going to manage it. The agenda is quite high goals, so I'm going to do the same for today. The first we're going to do is to increase the knowledge about the agenda. Some of you maybe never heard about it. Some of you work with it daily. The second goal is to be inspired. I want you to go away from here today and feel inspired and learn from each other in this room. The third goal is to create a picture of a global youth movement. And the fourth goal is to get home with some concrete activities or ideas how we can make the agenda true. We have lunch in the middle, and we're ending up with a little bit mingle here. Before that, we're going to have a panel discussion. You see here all the chairs. We're going to have a workshop in smaller groups, and then we're going to come back here in the afternoon and present what the workshop was about. So that's the day. You are here today. Your role today is to listen, to learn, to speak, to think, to debate, to discuss. But also, I know you have a life outside this apartment, but now is now and here is here. So try to be present in the moment today. Okay? Is that okay? I hope this is not going to happen, but if it will be a fire, sorry, you don't take the elevator, you take the stairs down. If it's a fire in here and it's smoke in all the stairs, we're going to move across, and I will guide, of course. If it's going to be a fire, you see the church here, right? If everyone is chaos, we meet there. Okay? Good. Have you found the toilets? Yes, good. Otherwise, check with someone else that found it. Are you ready for today? Yes. Like some days ago, I had a phone call from a guy named Johan, and I was very inspired by him. And I was also very impressed because he has a quite big job about the Agenda 2030. I was like, whoa, you're going to work hard if you're going to manage this one. But the feeling I got was, I got very inspired, and I hope he will bring that today as well. A big applaud for Johan Hassel.
Thank you very much, Josephine, and really thanks for lowering expectations. I mean, when you're supposed to talk, you always work with lowering expectations, and then you can reach above them, and then you sort of did your job, and you just made that a lot more difficult, and that is partly inspiring.
That was my point.
That was your point. So, thank you very much for having me here, and for me it's a very nice community to come back to in some way. And what I'm going to do is try to share some thinking, some ways of looking at this Sustainable Development Agenda, what are we heading to, and how can you reflect upon it. And then I'm going to talk a bit about what is the actual agenda, and what is the role of you guys with inside of that agenda. And I'm going to start off by saying that the only thing you actually need to remember, the only thing that you need to remember, that is the Agenda 2030 or 2030 Agenda or the Sustainable Development Goals is an agenda about young girls and boys and their living conditions. Because the Agenda 2030 is a vision, a couple of targets, a couple of goals, 17, which in somehow is going to frame a better future for the coming generation and for our life on this planet from a lot of different perspectives. And if you're going to achieve that, then you have to look at what is the conditions that young girls and boys are living up to. What is the conditions that young women, young men are facing when they are trying to get an education, when they're trying to get a job, and when they're trying to manage their lives. If you do that, and if you have that perspective, then you will fulfill the agenda. The problem is that that is not how the political, the economical, or the different systems that we're living in is working today. And that is partly our task. And young persons doesn't have that much persons, institutions, politicians, which is putting their case forward. And that's why you guys are so important. And what you guys are doing in FUF, in LSU, and what you're doing here, that is really important. And Hanna, who is part of the panel discussions, is sort of said, hey, you know, my task is actually of pushing you're in the agenda. And for me, that is, as I said, it's sort of like, I feel a bit like this is a friendly atmosphere and I'm sort of coming home. And that is because my background is a bit like Rosaline, who is also joining us later on. And that is, she said, we just met outside and she said, hey, I'm just commuting from Gothenburg to here, and it's a lot of living this life of studying and trying to do your engagement around here. And that's sort of like what has been my life as well. Because I'm a countryside guy, I grew up in Halland, I then moved to Lund and Malmö, I studied, I joined SSU, the political youth organization of the Social Democrats. So I've served in the national board for a couple of years, I moved back and forwards, and then I led SSU's international youth NGO for 3 years. And then during those 3 years I traveled to 60 countries and did a lot of seminars and workshops with young people. And I also worked at the Olof Palme's International Center with democracy support in Africa, Middle East and Palestine, for example. So for me that has been a journey, and then as a lot of you guys, I studied political science and economics. And what I think I have from that background and there's a lot of things that I don't have. I mean, I'm white, I'm male, I speak out loud, I did my military service, I also served in Kosovo. So, you know, there is a lot of things in society today that is working for me. And I think that is an important realization. And that also provides me with a special responsibility. In that sort of sense. And then I was also serving in European Youth Council, which I guess a lot of you guys are involved in as well, and I was sitting in the advisory committee on youth from the Council of Europe, and you know, you're doing all of that shit like you're doing today. And that is really important stuff. And what I think you realize when you've done that journey, and now I'm standing here and you're supposed in somehow to hold me responsible for how Sweden working with this sustainable development agenda. You also realize that you guys are really important, and I know that FUF and LSU is somehow striving, why is our voice important? And I think I can be in somehow some sort of witness of why I think it is important. And what does it mean when young people is represented around the table, and when are young people not represented? And young people is not only should not only be around the table in order to hold the youth voice, because if you are in the room, you belong to the room. So you always have to take the floor when that is needed. So that's partly, I mean, part what I'm coming from. Today I'm then the CEO of a think tank which is called Global Utmaning, Global Challenge, which means basically that we work with issues of globalization and sustainable development from the perspective of ecology, climate, economic and social issues. And that is a difficult task because we're not like a green think tank, we're not a welfare think tank, we're not an economical think tank, but we try to do different things. And I think that thinking and what I've been doing for the last like 2 years was in somehow very well fitted when I was together with 6 other awesome people. I was appointed to this delegation by the government, which has the task of providing an action plan or a guide or a path or however you want to address it, but an action plan to the government of how are Sweden gonna reach, work with and implement these 17 sustainable development goals, with a focus on how we're gonna do it in Sweden, but also internationally, what is it that Sweden needs to do in order to help the rest of the world to achieve this agenda. So that is the task of the delegation, and we're heading by Parul Sharma, which is an awesome CSR lawyer, and Johan Rockström, which is maybe the most famous professor next to Hans Rosling in Sweden, which is also part of it. And then it's Johanna from Sandal from Naturskyddsföreningen, Mattias from Klum, photographer, IP, Ingrid Pettersson, which is chair of Formas, which is a state research institute working with sustainable development. And we have the task of providing the government with a roadmap, how are we going to implement these goals. And a part of that is that we are going to have stakeholder dialogues, and you all of you are going to be invited and going to be central players in that, because we are in somehow thematically knowledgeable, but we are not experts. Our task is to provide the stakeholders and the experts so that we are finding the right work and we're finding the right action plan, and that we can push the political side, both the government but also the parliament, because as you know, in Sweden the government doesn't have a full majority, so if we affect the government but if we don't have support in the parliament, it doesn't really matter, because then it's not going to be forwarded, and then you have elections every 4th year and you don't really know what's going to happen. And also, and this is one of the main points, I think that institutions matters a lot, so we also need to get institutions on our side, the business sector and civil society, which is in somehow driving a lot of things within inside of what is happening in society, and which I think is also stakeholders and also experts within this agenda. But so that's part of, like, you know, this agenda is really about young people. A bit of, you know, what is my perspective on this work, and a few words on the delegation. And allow me now then to reflect a bit on, you know, where are we standing today as a society. And the philosopher Thomas Kuhn wrote a couple of years ago that, you know, that we live in different times of paradigms, and when you are entering a new paradigm, we are, you know, you sort of stick to the old ones. And if you're looking after the Second World War, the Western world sort of like built a welfare society. Then you entered a world of and wave of market liberalization during 70s, 80s and the 90s, and you had a wave of globalization. And then in somehow 2008, when the financial markets crashed and we got the economic crisis, which we're still stuck into, and which meant also a lot of social despair within inside of Europe, in somehow that paradigm stopped. And then at the same time you can argue that we've been living in a crisis of climate for quite some time, and we also realize that we need to change our behavior. And we can also see that we're living in a huge time of inequalities, and we can see that even though we achieved part of the MDGs, there is a lot of people that is living in poverty. So I think there is a realization that the way that we're living isn't really sustainable, and that it's not going to long, and it's not going to last. But no one have really provided a new vision, a new paradigm, which can actually overcome the one that has been and that we're going forward to. And we're living in the same financial system as we did before the crisis. We are talking about, and we had a COP21, which is saying we need to tackle climate change, but we are still consuming in a way which isn't really sustainable. And we can see that we're not really reaching through when it comes to poverty and inequality, which is still arising. And that is, I think, the explanation why we today are seeing what is happening in the US with Trump, what is happening in France with Le Pen, and what is happening in Sweden with the Swedish Democrats, and why people is turning the backside on politics. And that is really difficult, the wave of populism, racism, fascism that we're seeing. And I think that is partly because people cannot make sense of what is happening and what is the forward afterwards. So that is the bad side of what is happening within inside of the world. The good side, that is that we had 3 Olympics in sustainable development last year. And it was at this meeting when you had financing for development, which sort of set the course of how are we going to finance development aid. And then you have the SDG, which was implemented in the United Nations General Assembly. And that is a huge thing when all of the world leaders, all of the nation's leaders, presidents, prime minister, for the first time in history, agreed upon 17 goals for sustainable development, which is really about the conditions for young people. Just remember that. And that is sort of like magnificent. And then you had in Paris, you had an agreement, COP21, on how we're going to tackle climate change. And the business sector actually stepped in. They stepped in, realized our business models is not going to be long-term sustainable. It's less risk for me today compared to tomorrow of actually investing in what is renewables instead of going on with what is still fossil. And that is a big shift. We're going to have a 4th Olympics this year, and that is actually the Habitat meeting in Ecuador, in Quito, which is about cities. And the theme of this talk today is in somehow how do we go from local to global. And the point here is that the global agenda is local. The global agenda is local, because it is locally in cities, in municipalities, in communities that we're actually going to make change happen. It is about how do we organize our city when it comes to public transport. It is about how is our schools' education moving forward, how is our communities, and so on. And how are we engaged in that sort of sense. And that is the perspective that we need to have on when we're going forward to implementing. And that is my final word of this short introduction. That is that the world leaders have actually committed themselves. Where they're going to be held accountable for that, that is actually up to us as citizens, as our task within inside of the delegation, as my task as leading a think tank, and your task as being young leaders within inside of the Swedish and the global community. And that doesn't mean that we can just stand and say, hey, this is what you need to do. We also have to provide them with the solutions, provide them with the path to how we're moving forward, and push them and help them. Not only, you know, showing up the finger. When it's time for the finger, giving them the finger. But the thing is really that there is a lot of things that an older generation haven't realized. That is why we haven't moved on to a new paradigm. That is why we can see that the political side of today is not actually moving in favor of young people. There is a lot of us who thinks, and a lot of younger people than me that thinks that I'm going to be worse off than my parents were. So what is needed today, that is a vision. And Agenda 2030 is part of that vision. But how do we make that our vision, and how do we formulate something about it? And then we cannot forget that it's about economics, because we need a new economic narrative of how do we get a sustained, inclusive and sustained growth, which is in somehow tackling climate change, which is somehow providing less of inequality, which is in somehow favoring gender equality, and so on. And we need to create a feeling within inside of this society that we're all in this together. And diversity is good. Multicultural migration is what it strengthens us. And this is what the young generation realizes. And that is why the young generation needs to step up and step in to the political decision-making room. And that is perhaps one of my important tasks within inside of this delegation, of making sure that we take that commitment serious, and that we do that. Because Agenda 2030 is a unique opportunity. If we only blame it and we only blame the leaders, we're not going to achieve it. If we provide the solutions, if we hold them accountable, if we move forward together, then we're going to create something awesome and great. And there is really no alternative of not doing so. The alternative we can see today of how populism, racism and fascism is spreading with our societies. And we need to be that vaccination, that force against that. And I think Agenda 2030 can help us in that. So thanks for being able to share this morning with you, and listening to you as well, because as I want to say some stuff and push that to you, I'm also very keen on listening, because that's what's going to make this work successful. So thank you, Josephine.
Thank you. 60 countries. Whoa. I was like, 60? I want to. Which was the best country to travel to?
Which was the best country to travel to? What I think is, I've been a lot in Israel and Palestine, and if you go on partying in the old neighborhoods of Jerusalem, that is really great. And then you cross this wall, which is terrible, and then you go out in Ramallah and you smoke some shisha, and you enjoy the sweet life, you know. And the people in Israel and Palestine, I met, you know, in youth meetings all over the world, but I never meet them where they live. So I hang out with them and their families and their friends, you know, within inside of that community, and but that wall is stopping it. And today we see a lot of walls being built. Europe is building some sort of fortress, and bringing down those walls is I think that. So I think that is a good aspect of best countries.
Best country, yeah. I think I never heard someone say the agenda is for you young people, but mostly I'm not so young anymore, but still when I was younger I always felt like I don't have the power, or the politician really listening to me. So I think, who has the power over the agenda? The big power. if it's for the young people, it's the young people who has the power.
I mean, if you politics, I mean, is the good thing with politics and the bad thing with politics is that politics is driven by public opinion, and they are sort of like, hey, where is the public opinion coming in? And sort of what I'm trying to do here is shaping an agenda and shaping popular opinion by sort of saying this is what the agenda is all about, you know, and I think if you manage to get that message through, then I think that you will have the political side listening to that. And young people, I mean, if you're looking at what is happening in Africa, if you're looking at the situation in Asia or Latin America, which is a lot different to Europe, because in Europe you have a very aging population. And that is also affecting the political side. But globally speaking, there is a very strong force with the inside of the younger generation, because it is growing and it is the future. And young, well-educated people which travel across the world and gets to know and gets experience will, I think, be very influential. And I think that is a political realization. So, and people and politics in that sort of sense wants to be, you know, elected over time and over time. So it makes more sense for them trying to convince young people than old people, if you're a bit mean. And I think young people perhaps needs to, you know, to address that a bit more, you know. And also saying, hey, you know, this is not only what's on my mind, but I'm representing a generation here. I've got a stake in this. And then you don't have to have all answers. Young persons which is involved in youth organizations, a bit of self-criticism, some reflection about this as well, have a tendency to say, hey, I know everything, or, you know, this is it. And you don't really have to. And perhaps you know, you aren't either. So I think there is an important realization of, you know, realizing that I can bring to the table what I have. But part of that realization is also that other people sitting around that table, they don't have all the answers either. So, you know, I always be like that. I was like, we have all the answers on this one, because otherwise, so I agree. Thank you, Johan. We're going to have a panel discussion with more people than you, because it's a lot of different perspective of the agenda. So please welcome up Moreblessing, Hanna, Bosco, and Josephine. Oh, applause! Welcome.
Thank you.
Happy Saturday. I usually say on Saturday. If we start with you, Moreblessing, who are you?
Okay. Hi guys. Hi everyone. My name is Moreblessing Mavhika. Would you like me to stand up, or should I just?
You can sit.
All right. My name is Moreblessing Mavhika. I'm coming from Africa, a nation called Zimbabwe. Has anyone ever been to Zimbabwe? Oh, great. So I'm working with an organization called Network for Empowerment of Women and Girls. NEWAG is the acronym. It's actually a mouthful if you try to say it all. So you can just call it NEWAG. We are a women-focused organization, so I'm the coordinator there. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Welcome here.
Thank you.
Josephine.
Hi everyone, my name is Rosalind Marvina and I am the Vice President of LSU, which is the National Council of Swedish Youth Organizations, and I'm very happy to be here today in order to discuss Agenda 2030 and hopefully have action plans.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Hanna Hansson. I work for Concord, Sweden, which is the Swedish platform bringing together civil society organizations working on sustainable development. I consider myself young still.
You do.
Yeah. I'm really happy to be here today. Look forward to the conversations.
We are happy that you are here. Let's go.
My name is Bosco. I'm from Burma. And I belong to the organization name called National Youth Congress. It's really work for the young people in Myanmar and defending youth rights and promoting youth rights, especially we are engaging for the national youth policy and peace process. Yes. Have you ever been to Burma?
Yay!
Anyone been to Piteå?
Yay! Welcome. Mostly, the first time I heard about the agenda, I was like, what is this? I can't really get my head around it because it's quite big and it's very complex. So I think we should start there. Usually, I say back to basic. So what is the agenda? And my relationship to agenda, actually, it's different for week to week. Some week I'm very inspired by it, some week I'm very angry at it, some week my emotions to it goes up and down. So I think we'll start there. You can, if you're gonna say a short, describe the agenda in a very short way and tell us a little bit how your relationship with the agenda is this week. Do you want to start, Bosco?
Yes. It's like for us, my country, the first agenda is like peace process and then youth participation. Yeah. It's really challenging in my country. It's like we don't have the national youth policy yet, but still developing because it started last month ago with the engagement of the government, and it's like because our National Youth Congress also has some of the research during the election day about the youth and politics and election engagement like that. So we found some of the major issues like 33% of the quality education, and then 27 met with unemployment and poverty and ethnic conflicts, violence, and then high price as well. So it's really difficult to scope in everything because for the SDG we related with most of the issue because we are living under the military government for the nearly 60 years. So everything has destroyed and everything has damaged during last year. So for us, it's really important to organize, to engage, is really to cover all the issues by national youth policy. And the other process is youth participation in peace and nationwide reconciliation. Because we have mostly 135 tribes, and then most are really live in their, they also looking for their indigenous right, and then we don't have freedom of religion, and there is no policy to cover and protect some of the different minority and then minority right as well. So it's really important for the participation in peace process in Burma as well. But some of the restrictions by the legal framework are still in the constitution and then some of the policy. So for example, like if I want to be president, I must be 45. It's something like that. Yeah, it's really restrict to the youth participation and other administration body also. So I choose it's like peace process and youth participation in administration, legislation, and youth development, and some of the participation. This is my agenda.
Yeah, nice. Hanna, you work with this, so you should be very, his pitch you should have. What is the agenda and what's your relation?
Well, the agenda is, I guess it's three things. It's a vision, it's really a beautiful vision that I think that we should all bring with us when we go from here. If we can reach that vision, we'll have a really great place to live in 15 years when some of us are still young. It's also a promise. It's a promise that all heads of states and governments have made to us. They will make it happen. So it's a promise that we need to keep reminding them about. And it's a tool. And I think the tool part is really important. It's not just 17 goals with different colorful logos, but it's really in this agenda. There are tools and little bits that we can use for the work that we already do in our local communities. So I think then that's an important thing, and that's when it gets valuable, when we start breaking it down, picking what we're already doing it and using it to kind of strengthen that.
And how's your relationship to it?
It's complex. How much time do we have? No, it's my relationship is good. You know, it's there every morning when I go to work, and it reminds me kind of where I'm striving in the coming 15 years, and something that I want to be a part of. So yeah,
it's good.
Yeah.
Josephine, what is the agenda for you?
For me, well, for the world, it is an agreement between 193 countries, which is incredible itself. But for me, I will try to show you by a question to the audience. How many of you work with at least one of the Sustainable Development Goals? Raise your hand. this is, for me, Agenda 2030. This. Young people and youth organizations working with the Sustainable Development Goals in order to create a better world than the one we have. That is Agenda 2030. But at the same time, we don't really have the fair conditions to work with those things. We want to create a sustainable society, sustainable organization, sustainable engagement, but we don't really have those conditions. And that can create a lot of damage. So 2030 could be really, how can I say, it's also a deadline in a way for society to acknowledge us, young people and youth organizations, to be the ones carrying all of these goals. Because for me at least, I believe that the Agenda 2030 and the 17 goals, they are most relevant to young people. As you said, in year 2030, I don't think I will be, at least in the European Union, considered young people. I will be older than 30, but like for the young people, we are always the one present now, but also in the future with these questions. So it's our questions, but it's important that society, governments, and everyone, the global community sees this and sees the role of the global youth movement as well, which we are a part of, I would say. All of the raised hands, and the ones who didn't, we will work together to achieve those goals. So that is the...
And how's your relationship to it?
It's complex as well. It really is. Because it's
like a love relationship, it's very complex up and down, yeah.
It really is, because it's a great accomplishment itself, the agenda and with the goals. But at the same time, we have to think of how vague it is. That's one thing, and which questions are not in the agenda. For instance, the agenda don't emphasize the issues that the LGBTQ community faces and so on. There are so many perspectives that are not included, and I think we all here can understand why, because UN is itself a very complex platform with many both democratic and non-democratic nations and states and so on. So it's very complex, but I think that hopefully in the future we will be here and also young people forming a new set of goals.
Moreblessing, what is the agenda for you?
For me, it's more or less the same as everyone has said, but these are the 17 United Nations goals that were adopted by the United Nations, and they require partnerships, actually, global partnerships, because without partnerships we can never reach the Sustainable Development Goals. And for me, I work mostly with SDG 5, gender equality, because without the participation of women, without the participation of young women, we can never achieve Sustainable Development Goals. So yeah, I feel like they are actually important for youth because they consider youth and the participation of youth in all the aspects of development, be it economic, be it social, be it political, and yeah, for me those are the Sustainable Development Goals, and I hope that we reach them by 2030. Yeah.
And how's your relationship to it? Is it also complex, or is it just happy, or?
No, as I said before, I work for an organization that deals with women and girls, so I'm all about women and girls. SDG goal number 5, gender equality. So yeah, I'm always working with that, be it health, be it economic participation of young women. So yeah, that's my involvement in Sustainable Development Goals.
Johan, you get this question a lot, I think. What is the agenda?
What is the agenda? I mean, what I think is the interesting thing with the agenda is the scope. That you're both saying you're going to tackle poverty, you're going to tackle climate change, you're going to work with peace and security, you're going to provide education for all, you're going to improve health for all, you're going to reduce inequalities, you're going to work with sustainable consumption, sustainable production, you're going to get a different growth model, and so on. And it's the combination. And that is the difficult thing when you're working with it, and that is perhaps my feeling frustration sometimes, because how do you create a logic behind how do you tackle these different goals, and how do you make that so that they are endorsing each other, and how also do you provide different communities? I mean, the climate community, the health community, partly the youth community and the business community. How do you make them realize that they're depending on each other and cannot really fight for the space of, hey, this is what is most important. But you create it in somehow equal without, you know, saying that there is no priority of it. And that is sort of like my take then, saying, hey, it's about young persons' living conditions. Is a way of trying to form, of saying, okay, what is the focus that we need to have on that? And that, I think, is also the generational perspective of sustainability.
And how's your relationship to that?
Nah, but it's partly frustrated. How do you gonna, you know, frame this? How am I gonna have enough time working on this?
Yeah.
How am I gonna be able to engage all these people in, you know, doing it? How am I in somehow not stepping over the line what I think the agenda should be about? And, you know, what is the delegation saying that it is about? And, you know, what is the helping the government but pushing the government? But I mean, I think it's as I said, I think it's a prospect of a vision that the world needs. So for me, it's a lot about hope, frustration and hope.
Nice. I would say, what do you say, Rosalind? It's a deadline for a better world. I think that's that was a nice.
That's very well put.
Yeah, it's a very nicely put. A deadline for a better world. I know the guys in the back, so you have to speak up a little bit. Just so I think of repeating stuff. If you repeat stuff all over again and again and again, you actually remind them better. So today, all of us together are going to do 3 things. And I will let you guys do exactly the same 3 things that this guy is going to do. And the first thing we're going to do today during a workshop is to talk about a global youth movement. That's a quite big words. A global youth movement. And I would start with you, Moreblessing. Is there a global youth movement? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes? Collaborate.
Yes, I feel like there's a global youth movement because youth are more connected, youth are partnering more often, they are collaborating more often, be it through organizations, civil society organizations, be it through political parties, be it through workshops and other things. So I feel like youth are working together more. There's more of collaborations now. So I feel like there's a global youth movement. And
it's growing, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh. Rosalind?
Yeah, I agree. And I love the term global youth movement. It makes me so happy.
Yeah, just feel the words. It's beautiful.
No,
yeah.
It's like it's a unity, strung together. And I also believe that there exists because there's so many youth organizations and young people. It does not only exist in this room and not only in Sweden, right? It's all over the world. And we are all, I think our engagement is thanks to or because of, how can I say, not crisis in society, but what we see, what we can fulfill. And that is not only, once again, not in Sweden, but the whole world. We have, there's political issues and so on. So I believe that we together, as a movement, can continue working with the Agenda 2030 because we work with those goals already. But we can do that in a more structured way, with indicators and so on, to see that we are moving in the right direction, fulfilling that goal. So I believe that we exist. And one thing you mentioned about like, that we are connected. Yes, we are, because I think that's something that could be unique for our generation in that way. Because I think many of you have a smartphone or similar. We have the world in our hand. In that way, we can. Nothing is unknown anymore. So in that way, we have the right conditions. But we just have to have the other conditions, resources, in order to move together as a force.
Bosco, boom. Do you believe that you are in a global youth movement, a part of it?
Yes, it's really difficult to say it like that. Yeah, we are connecting with some of the maybe movement, but I think yes, we don't have totally 100% of sense of belonging participated in the global youth network, because it's really difficult to catch who is the stakeholder in Myanmar for this issue, because we have too many civil society groups and we don't have most of the representation. It's really full of mandate from the society for this issue like that. We have too many experts like that, but they are not stakeholder anything. But in the global youth movement, most of the people directly connect those of the expert, not the stakeholder. So it's less interest in Myanmar. It's kind of it's happening like because in 2014 we organized the SDG even, but United Nations volunteer UNV and UNTP connect with some of our college to organize the SDG event. But on that time, they connect her, but she's totally not stakeholder. So she invited some of the organizations, some of the young people from our network or something like. But and after that, we have some of the mixed understanding between the United Nations agency and then civil society group. The people think, this is just only UN agenda. It's according to the program, according to the project. It's not belong to X like that. So that's why in 2014, even though SDG has launched in Myanmar very last year, but nobody knows and nobody has sense of belonging about the SDG as well. So sometimes it can be difficult to touch the stakeholder. But I think even because the SDG, I belong as the global youth movement in here because I'm also feel like it's really need for the world for it, and we need to solve the globally. For this one, for me just only. So I'm not sure for the other people. We need more sense of belonging in the country because people are in a less stress situation among the political situation and then international pressure and even civil war in my country. So for this one, it's really challenging.
For us, it's easy to say that we are a part of a global youth movement because we are a part of it. But who's in and who's out?
Yes.
But and I usually want to criticize. I work for many youth organizations in Sweden, and we always ask the question: why should youth be a part of this? And I believe that's a stupid question because it's of course we should be a part of it. Why all the time ask why? So actually for Hanna and Johan, I would what are you really expecting from the youth according to the agenda? What do you expect from the youth? Hanna?
Well, I'm expecting you to make something out of this opportunity, of this promise and this vision, and kind of, I mean, it's been served to us. It hasn't been served because it was a lot of hard work getting these goals in, but that's a different story. It's there. We have a promise. So it's then young people's job to make sure something happens with that. Because I think Johan raised the point earlier that politics are driven by public opinion. Well, there's nothing louder than a bunch of young people that are really pissed off. We know that. So that's what I expect. And I know that in order for that to happen, there needs to be young people from different parts of the world need to connect, and not just young people, but people in general. Because I think what you say is a really important point. It's like we won't have a global movement unless we help each other and we support where it's needed the most. So that's another thing to stop and think: is it really? Because I have this space, should I be taking it, or should I be helping a colleague or a friend to take this space instead? And I think then we can really build a strong foundation in that. So be loud, and work together, and don't give up. And I think, my expectations were pretty high.
Yeah. Also on you, because you're young, so.
Yeah.
Johan, what do you expect from young people over the world?
I was speaking to some of you when I was at FUF and talked about Agenda 2030 just before Almedalen, and then I asked a question after I sort of went through the agenda: what is important to you? And then I got the same answer that I got in 60 countries, and that is basically that what is important for me, that is, the health and well-being of my family, my friends, having somewhere, to grow up in a good, housing situation, getting a good education, getting the possibility to get a job and, making your own money, and then form your life and live as a young adult. And I think what is the most important, that I think is stressing that. What is important for me, what should be the focus of politics, and then hell yeah, Agenda 2030 is actually saying that those things are important, because you're talking about sustainable cities with good, housing, good communication. You're talking about getting off well in health and in education and so on. So there is a linkage there. But if you're talking about what is the focus of the debate of politics today, you cannot really see that. And you asked the question, is there a global youth movement? Hell yes. But all of these things actually cost a lot of money. Does it exist a lot of money inside of the world? Hell yes. Do we have a good global way of collecting those taxes? Hell no. Most probably half of you, just like me, have an iPhone. And if you've been following the news briefly, you could see that Apple haven't really been paying their taxes, but they're doing some good stuff in charity, and we like the design and so on. And there's a lot of people that is getting rich on that, and it's not a problem getting rich on that. But there is a problem that we have a lot of very big companies and enterprises which are not paying any taxes, either in developed countries, even though that they are based there, even though that they are hiring people there, and so on. So honestly speaking, the problem is that we don't have a global system, or however you call it, which is economically making sure that we can collect the resources that is needed. And I'm not even saying that you should raise taxes. I'm just saying that people should pay the taxes. Rich people should pay the same taxes as people with low income does, and big companies should pay the same taxes that a young person which is starting up their consultancy, design firm or whatever is paying. And that is not the thing today. If you would collect taxes in Europe without having tax havens and so on, you would be able to pay for all the welfare within inside of society. If you would pay the global taxes, you would have all the funds of funding those poor countries which is thriving and is trying to develop. So we need to have a discussion about what is the problem. What is the real problem, and how can we work together in achieving that? And that is local problems, but they are depending on a global solution. And then we have to make our national politics accountable, the European Union, for example, and we need to see an increased cooperation between the countries. And if the Agenda 2030, if that promise, as Hanna has pointed out, is fulfilled, then they also have to cooperate, have a cooperation not only on setting the goals, but also how are we going to fund the goals. And that means that you need to have, a global movement, which is setting that up. And I think that is the big question.
If I ask you in the audience, do you believe does a global youth movement exist? If you think, raise your hand. Not all of you, huh? Nice.
Can I yell at them?
No, actually can't.
But can I just say that there is so much that is done by you today, even though that it's not as coordinated as you perhaps would wish, or if you're an organizational geek, which I sometimes is. But just not being proud of all the things that you're doing is in somehow saying that the ones who is not listening to youth because hey, I want to listen to everybody, not just the specific, is in somehow giving them the argument. So there is a youth movement if you're looking at the issues that you're working with and the perspective that you're working at, and you should be proud of that. So raise your hands.
We're going to actually discuss this in the workshop, like what is the purpose of a global youth movement, and what is being done in that for now? Because as you say, a lot of things going on, as you all say. And I say, Hanna, I point to you, you say be loud. I take that with me. So be loud and don't give up. We're also going to do today, during the workshop, a WOW plan. A WOW plan is a plan if we time travel to 2030 and we stand there, we sit here in the same room, all of us guys, and I will say, wow, we are here. What is the wow? What happened if there is the wow feeling of 2030? You want to start, Josephine? What's the wow?
Absolutely. Before I go into the wow, I want to just comment on
of course.
being loud, and I agree with you. like when young people are loud, we can see effect. But at the same time, I don't think screaming is the best opportunity. When we reach out our hand, the government or the other person should be reaching out and holding us. You know what I mean? It should be a collaboration, and that doesn't really, how can I say? We're talking about the global youth movement, and it's our task to do this, but we really have to have fair conditions, and we don't really have in this moment, even though there are regulations. For instance, it's actually not new, but relatively new, and it's the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2250 about including young people in political processes and peace building. So hopefully, until 2030, it should be implemented. But now to the wow.
The wow.
Yes,
yeah.
the wow. When we are at 2030.
Yeah.
The wow should be, oh my God, we implemented the goals, right? That should be basic. That should be basic. And the second wow is youth and young people and youth organizations are recognized as the carriers of the goals and the ones establishing the goals. So as a result to that, we should be the one also included in discussions. Not only 193 countries, even though that's a lot, so good job, United Nations, but at the same time, we should be included at the table to discuss what's relevant for us, because we are the one, as we all said, we're going to be the one implementing those goals, so we should be the ones having the ownership of those goals. You know what I mean? Mm. So that should be the second thing. And the third thing should be moving towards a better world and hopefully see, hopefully create something that's better than we already have now, what's given to us, so we can hand on something better for young people then, because once again, I think almost everyone in this room won't be considered youth anymore at 2030. So we should remind ourselves when we are there to involve young people, so they won't have these kind of discussions. You know what I mean? This is the last time.
Moreblessing, what's your wow 2030?
For me as a young person, I think wow in 2030 would be freedom of youth to participate in all the phases of development, be it social, be it economic, be it political. For example, in Zimbabwe, we have a terrible political situation right now. Youth cannot say whatever they want. They don't have the freedom to participate in political processes. So for me, when we reach 2030, I want to say, wow, youth can now finally participate in political processes. Youth can now finally participate in economic processes. And number two, gender equality. When we reach 2030, I would want to say, wow, women can now also finally participate in everything they want to participate in, because women have also been excluded in so many things. Especially, I'll speak on behalf of my country. I come from a rural place, it's called Chivi, and women are so poor, they're so affected by poverty, they can't even participate, even voting, elections. They can't even, they don't have a salary, a basic salary to live on. It's really hard for women to survive in that kind of situation. So for me, number two would be, wow, women can now participate in economic processes. Wow, women, yeah, for sure. And now women, I find can now, what do you call it, take part in decision-making processes, in political processes. Wow, women can also make decisions on political tables. Yeah, for me, that would be my wow in 2030.
Goosebumps. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, yeah.
What's your wow, Johan?
Wow, we realized like 2016, 2017 that we were all in this together, and that we also needed to start acting now and not 2030. I think that is going to be like the crucial point, 2030. Did we start now, as today, or did we start like 2020, 2025? You know, we don't have that much time.
So we got started quite early. That's the wow. Bosco, what's your wow?
Yes, I have two wows.
Wow, yeah.
It's like I separate like the locally and the globally as well. Some for the peace projects, yeah. And my wow will be it's really peace here with the social harmony, and then it's really kind of the war or civil war is something here. Without civil war and sustainable environment here, we are facing with many of disaster in every season here. In the hot season, very hard, very stringent weather. Yes, like so. My one is without war and then peace process about the social harmony in the globally, because it's really affect to local because of some of the conflict in somewhere. It's really affect to the local context. Maybe it's just trying and is invade some of the social harmony. And the other thing is like wow, is youth participation. Maybe youth mania is already include women, LGBT and disability in legislation and administration, peace, development without restriction. And then the other things is like in National Youth Congress, National Youth Policy implementation and peace building, especially for the nationwide reconciliation amongst the tribes and the majority people in my country. And the other point is like social harmony into the other religions like majority and minority and freedom religion.
Wow. Hanna, what's your
I'm
wow?
away by all their wows.
I think you can.
For me, a wow would really be if a country and an individual's success wasn't measured any longer by economic growth in how much money and how much ahead of someone else or another country would get, but if it was really measured by the way in which it was sustainable, the way in which it was inclusive and really didn't leave any people behind. If we had those type of rankings where that's what we were striving for. So it's quite a heavy one, but it's really kind of changing the growth model or the success model that we have and making that a reality. And I think that's an interesting wow, because there are little parts that I can do at an individual level, and there's parts that Sweden can do as a country, and then it's something that needs to happen at the global level. Then I'd be wowed.
That would be wow.
Yeah.
Nice. I really hope all of this gonna happen. 2030. That's gonna be a wow moment. I hope so. And also we're gonna discuss today what's your wow, considering the agenda. The really wow moment. And I hope we're back here in this room and we can say, yes, all the wow, we can have a great party and say, wow, 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 we did it. I'm scared of one thing with the agenda, and you actually put it up. And I know, Hanna, you usually say this. That's also the theme of the day. Local going global. Because I think it is local, but it's also global. Can you collaborate? I know you have talked about this before.
Well, I think it's a challenge in bringing the agenda down to, the United Nations level and the kind of abstract UN resolutions. I mean, there's lots and lots of those resolutions, and they're often very dusty, and they're not very relevant to most people. And that's a real challenge, because the language isn't very accessible. The UN in itself isn't, although it's getting better, very, very accessible. So that's why I think this tool again is really important. It's like, don't look at it and look at these 17 goals that the leaders decided, but look at make it relevant here. I think it's really possible, and it's really interesting if we all start from where we are. One of the things I've been doing over the past year is I've been working with colleagues in another 8 countries from all continents of the world. That are all, involved civil society in one way or another. And we've been kind of working together to share experiences of what is Agenda 2030 in our context, what are our priorities, what are our governments doing and what are they not doing, what's the delegation in our country doing and not doing, and how can we be strategic together. So it's been a way for me to connect what we do here in Sweden and what we expect from Sweden with, with what's happening in other countries. Our countries are very, very different. We have all different types of challenges. Yeah. I mean, we have everything from Timor-Leste to Colombia to Sweden to Liberia. So the challenges are all there, but I think that's another kind of thing to make it, to connect and then share these types of experiences.
Yeah. And also here,
Yeah.
Also with you can see it's very different how you go into the agenda depending on where you are.
It's a similar thing, you know, as a feminist also connected to the global feminist movement. It's like when you get together women from different countries, it might seem like your challenges are different, and they are in a way, but in reality, it's the same struggle.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
Good. I would say, Johan, your wow was that we started early. So this is the wow. This is the wow. But I think if we're gonna achieve the wow effect, 2030, we also have to get started. So we're gonna end this day, because for me, the agenda, if we're gonna achieve the agenda, everyone has to do their part. So we're gonna end the day of you writing down your part. What you want to do according to agenda. So I think we're gonna have around here, would you say, what's your personal contract to agenda? What are you going to achieve? What are you going to do? And please be concrete. It can be like, I'm going to write an email tomorrow to Stefan Löfven and say, agenda is for young people. Johan, you can do that, yeah. So you can also be very concrete. So it doesn't have to be very, very big. Do you want to start Moreblessing?
Okay, for me.
What's your personal contract?
My personal contract. For me, when I get back to Zimbabwe from Sweden, I'm going to create more spaces for women to actually meet and discuss about the Sustainable Development Goals and how they can be involved in this movement. So I feel like that's important for me, and that's my personal contract. As soon as I get off from the plane and I get home, that's the first thing I'll do. Yeah.
Nice. Johan?
What's your personal contract?
Now, but my personal contract here is that, I mean, I promise to do what I can, and I think everybody in the delegation is hopefully on my side, of making sure, I mean, that the youth perspective and the civil society perspective is very present in the work of the delegation and part of the action plan that we're formulating. And then if I reach out and make Sweden realize that this agenda is about, young people totally, I cannot really promise that, but I can promise to make my voice heard in that perspective.
We back you up on that.
Thank you.
Bosco.
Yes, me, still now, I'm one of the working group member of National Youth Policy developing and forming team. So I have to continue to have a National Youth Policy development. And then, the other things is like, I'm also working for the peace. It's like different. So we really have to advocate, and we really have to do in the political situation like federalism, democracy. Because all the ethnic young people and then some of the indigenous people, they're really eager their rights, to protect their rights also. So because it's really touching to the nationwide reconciliation, it's like, because it's happened in the past, but for young people, I think from X we have to start this step to the federalism and democracy. So it's I will implement this during after my but not after my view, as I'm already planned before. And then the other point is that before I'm usually work for the freedom of religion and protect by the policy for the minority or marginalized people in Burma. Yeah.
Great. Hanna, what's your personal contract?
Well, they're different on different levels. The first one, as me outside of my professional role, is I decided I have a favorite goal, and it's goal 10.7. I expect you all to know which one that is. No, it's one on safe and responsible migration, and I think in the context of Sweden and Europe where we are right now, I made a personal commitment to really work on that, to make sure that the legal frameworks that we see and the political discussions change, and that Sweden and the EU steps up. And I can do that in different ways. I can do it by making my voice heard, which I do, but I also want to do my part in making sure that some of the people that come to Sweden are welcomed here and that they feel safe here, and that's ways of connecting, particularly with young people that are here. So that's one commitment. The other one is to continue to make sure that that Sweden particularly, but also other countries, make sure that Agenda 2030 really is and becomes their political agenda. In the case of Sweden, I want to push and continue to push so that there is an ambitious action plan that really recognizes that we have challenges both within Sweden and things that we need to do in the world, and I won't be happy until it's well balanced.
A well balanced between that, yeah. Josephine, what's your personal contract?
Oh, my contract, I think, will be the thing I love to do, and that is to help youth organizations. So I want to enable, it's called dubbla stödet in Swedish, and it's double the financial support, sort of, for the youth organizations, because I believe organizations and democratic organizations are the best way for young people to be organized and to move towards a goal or ambitions or something like that. So I want to create the right conditions, and that is to keep on talking with the delegation to hopefully include that in the action plan, and to the government and to all of other stakeholders in this society that could hopefully enable, because you, once again, you here are the one already doing the goals, but we have to do it in a more structured way and continue doing that, because if we don't have the right conditions, it will stop, and then we have problems. Yes.
Nice. Does any one of you have a question for the panel? Just raise your hand. Don't be shy. No one. Oh, I have more questions, because I have asked so many questions. So.
What's the definition of a sustainable country, as you mentioned? What's your definition of sustainable?
Ooh, I'm glad you asked. We've actually developed our alternative measure, what we call it the well-being measurement. And it has a few different, of course this is, at a policy geeky level, but I think it makes sense. It has a lot to do with, on the social levels, it's whether like access to education and access to health, like if people have the factors that are there to kind of be, to develop all their capacities and to be safe. And then there are the environmental dimensions added to that, where like once they have all that, they do it in a balance with nature. So that means that them getting access to food and getting access to education isn't degrading nature. So there's quite a lot of interesting work being done on developing these alternative measures of progress. There are some that have been a little bit accepted, but it's complex, because the more factors you add, the more, how you measure them. But I think that this balance between the individual being a part of the larger is one where most countries still fail. We have some models like the Swedish model that's more maybe successful in the welfare state than many other countries, but we really haven't succeeded in our ecological footprint. That's awful. So there's no success example yet, but there are ways to get there.
Nice.
This is for the whole panel, I suppose. I'm not quite sure where to direct this question. It's about the youth organization. So part of my question is, like, what's the most efficient way for youth to organize to really get our voice across and to influence? Second part of the question is, like, how will youth organize in the future? The technology is going so fast. Youth are often at the forefront of using technology. Can you even imagine what it's going to be in 10 years, let alone in 14 years when this wow moment is? So first, what's the best way for youth to organize now, and how will they organize in 10, 15 years?
Whoa. Bosco, do you want to start?
Yes. The best thing to organize the young people is this kind of sense of belonging of me. Because if I want to start, I can start. I think this is the Bladh's legacy, and this is the Bladh's human resource from starting point from me. Because it's like, we also face like this problem in my country last year, because we don't have a mobile phone in last many years. But suddenly now everywhere the touch screen, everywhere everybody with the phone. So they have less interest in the social and some of the issue like. But yeah, the people have sense of belonging. It's like whatever you are, whatever you want, whatever you walk, but you have just only basic mind of the concept. If you want to change yourself, you can change. So for me, I'm organizing the young people also. We are not organizing the young people with blindfolds or something like that. It just only depends on your opinion. You can for the social. So it's really, before we also organize some of the awareness training like that. But when they got, this is the sense of belonging. For example, about the politics. In even 1988, we have the public movement, and it's really a historical movement in Burma. All the public go outside to the street, and then they have a big demonstration. It's like non-violent action. Nobody is organizing. It's like that. So it's sense of belonging from the public, and then especially for the young people, they know that what they have to do for their future. So we just only need to organize first. Okay, who want to follow this rule, or who want to negotiate together, or who want to cooperate with us? For this one, I think we just only need only one initiator for the organization or something. The other people will cooperate within maybe one maybe blah time.
Hanna?
I'll go to the second one on how they will organize. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, I think that we should definitely be smart and make use of the new technology that's there, because it really is making it a lot easier. Just the other week, I was scrolling down Facebook. You know, it's not the most exciting part of your day, but it happens. And then all of a sudden, this live video pops up from my Gambian friend, who's right now leading a youth movement to get the current leader out of power, right? And he was using this live streaming function from a demonstration that he was doing. And I was thinking, like, you know, it was very hard for me to just continue scrolling down. Of course, I get engaged, I get pissed off when I hear about what's happening in that country, and I want to connect. And as a result, like, of that, I can quickly, with new technology, send him an email and ask, you know, what's up? Can I connect you with something here? Like, tell me about that. So I think, I mean, technology isn't going to solve anything. Technology is also, you know, produced by companies to make us consumers. So we need to, you know, not think that they're going to solve everything, but it would be silly not to use them and be smarter about it. I mean, I don't know how many hours you have spent on broken Skype calls. They're not perfect, but it wouldn't even have been possible to connect with people from other countries if it wasn't for it.
Yeah. Josephine?
Yes.
This is one of your favorite, I think. Yeah.
First of all, good question. It's really, it's complex in a way, but like the best way for young people to get organized is, of course, youth organizations, in my opinion, once again. And it's also to, my tip is to collaborate. Collaboration is the key. For instance, like what we're doing here is FUF and LSU, collaborating towards the same goal. So that is to unite with other young people, because like then we can gather the resources, gather the people and our ambitions and so on to move forward. But like for the future, I love it because it's a bit speculative, but I think it's fun to do that. And I would say that it could be complex in a good and negative way. Complex in a way that I don't think, if we're going to take it more like state structure, borders are, how can I say, they will exist, but like people will be connected in a more intense way than now. And I think that will be the same way for organizations. Organizations will be not only national, they already exist, transnational, international organizations, but that will be in a greater extent, I think, because we will see similarities and also differences between young people all over the world, because I think that could be the future of youth organizations, more international. And also I hope that young people, because how can I say, foreign policy, as I think we all think is interesting, I think we're also, I'm preaching to the choir, if you understand what I mean. But there are so many people that doesn't really have foreign affairs in their hearts and minds. And I Yeah, right. No, but that's sad because it affects us, so we should be able to affect foreign policy. And I think with education and if we accomplish those goals, I think we can have whole of the different kinds of youth organizations with international solidarity and etc. etc. And also hopefully that the decision-making institutions, they will include us once again, implement 2250, the Security Council resolution, and many other things. So, a complex answer to your complex question. Thank you.
Blessing, how do you think the youth should organize best?
I think I agree that youth should organize through youth organizations. I think that's the only way that we can reach to everyone, even the grassroots people, because I think one motto of the Sustainable Development Goals is also not to leave anyone behind. So I feel like the different youth organizations that exist in different parts of the world, in different parts of the country, they are also going to help us to organize the youth. And I'm a strong believer in the power of social media, the technology. I feel like most young people actually use social media more, and I feel like it has the power and the potential to actually bring change when we bring our voices together on social media. So I feel like in 2030 we are still going to use social media to actually try and organize, maybe through Twitter chats, maybe through Facebook. It's actually happening now, and many campaigns, many petitions are being signed on social media. So I feel like social media is actually a good solution to organizing youth. Yeah.
Johan, any thoughts?
I hope that we will, talk and meet like this, and I think in 10-15 years, we will be more efficient and smarter in how to do that. And I think there is a power in people meeting and talking and discussion, and realizing that we have very common aspirations, common ideas, common perspectives. And I think the big problem today is that those who, that people is trying to separate us and keep us apart. And also one of the reasons why racism and so on is so strong in our societies, that is because we don't meet each other enough. And that is, we don't meet each other in different communities within some of the same city, and we don't meet each other compared to different countries and different regions and so on. So I hope that in 10-15 years we are smarter and more efficient in meeting, but I hope that we're is having a more global conversation.
Nice. Thank you so much. When you have fun, that hour is quite fast. Thank you so much for your perspective, your engagement, and I hope we have a wow moment.
This was a wow moment.
Yeah, I believe so too. Yeah, this is the first one. And I'm looking forward to see what's going to happen with your personal contracts that you put on today. Of course, we have a book for you, and it's different for not for each person, but thank you, Bosco. Applaud for Bosco. Thank you, Moreblessing. Thank you, Johan.